The late great martial arts master Bruce Lee has been gone since 1973, dead at the age of 32 years old, young, and there's a lot that have gone on in the martial arts since then. New eras have arisen since his death or passing. We've had, after he died, we had the age of the ninja, Shokasugi and so forth in the 80s. And then you had John Claude Van Damme, Surface, Steven Seagal, Surface. Chuck Norris came out with many movies, The Octagon and Breaker Breaker and all of those types of movies right after Bruce Lee's death and so forth. So many people have enjoyed success in the martial arts movies and even in martial arts entertainment since Bruce Lee's passing. And even Bruce Lee's notoriety and his schools have spread throughout the world. Bruce Lee has Jeet Kune Do schools under various instructors throughout the world, or Jun Fan schools as well, if you will. But there's one thing that's always been interesting to me over the past maybe 7 to 18, 8 or 10 years, and that is the people who never gave Bruce Lee his due as it relates to his status as a martial artist, and a great one. I've heard people talk down on Bruce Lee and denigrate him or try to lower him to the status of just simply an actor. I've heard people say that he had never been in any major tournament. We're talking about a sport tournament. I've heard people say that Bruce Lee was overrated. I've heard someone say that Bruce Lee was not even amongst some of the top martial artists during his time. But what I find is even interesting on top of that is the fact that these people that are making these statements, many of them, were living during the time that Bruce Lee was here, and they never said it to him. They never challenged Bruce Lee then. And my question now is why? After all of these years, after the man has passed away, all of these individuals hate on him and throw vitriol at him and say that he wasn't that good and he wasn't who he pretended to be. But the real core of this video is predicated on who has stood up for this late great martial arts pioneer and innovator. Who has done that? It's not to say that the many students and people that he's influenced and who came up with and alongside him, that they don't love him. It's not to say that they never loved him. But I'm interested in knowing why no one has ever stood up against these naysayers, so to speak. I'm not talking about getting in an argument, but I'm talking about at least speaking up and defending Bruce Lee's status or status for some. I have never seen, now if you have seen, I will stand corrected, but I have never seen any student of his take a platform and go after these people who have said that Bruce Lee was nothing more than an actor. Never seen it done. I have seen, to their credit, some of them living and even past, I have seen them in an interview and someone asked them about this very subject. There are people who say that Bruce Lee wasn't this and wasn't that and so forth, and they responded, to include the late Jim Kelly. He said no one on the planet could have beat Bruce Lee. Those were his words. And there were other people who was talking about, I've never seen anybody as fast as him. He's received so many accreditations, so many accolades from people when they've had interviews with various commentators and so forth. But as far as the bulk of the assaults on Bruce Lee go, not one time have I ever, and I have a great deal of respect for Bruce Lee's family, not one time have I ever seen anyone take the reins and say, let me make a video. Let me print an article. And let me address the elephant in the room. For all of those people who say that my father, my teacher, my shifu, my cousin, whoever Bruce Lee was to them, my close friend, let me put the rest coming from my lips these naysayers' attacks. I've never seen Shannon do it. I love Shannon Lee, as I already have said, even in previous videos. I don't make this stuff up. I'm not just saying these things just to be saying them, but I'm wondering why no one has ever stood up and defended Bruce Lee's status as the greatest martial artist of all time. And some people say, well, his record speaks for itself. Is this something that we're supposed to pull out of the ethers or something and just assume that it's okay? But it's more important in my mind that the people that were closer to him at least put it on record who Bruce Lee was and what he was as a martial artist, as opposed to just simply saying through escapism, oh, everybody just simply knows. I don't want to accept that. Everybody just simply knows. Someone who walked alongside him, who lived with him, who talked with him, who sat and ate dinner and lunch with him during his lifetime, someone who has embraced the man, someone who had those heart-to-heart talks with him, those individuals should have stepped up and said something about their instructor. Now, fast forward to today. As best as I know, even though there may have been snippets here and there, but as best as I know, I am the only one that has ever defended Bruce Lee's position as the greatest martial artist that's ever lived during our time. No one else. And I don't say that to pat myself on the back. It's just simply a fact. Now, if I'm not that individual, if I'm not the only one that's ever done this, and I have a plethora of videos before this one that can be pulled up. All you have to do is type in Bruce Lee's name on my channel here, and you will see those videos. And they date back 6-7 years. So there is no shame in my game. I am not, for the record, the official Bruce Lee protector. That's not my job. Because I have defended many people on this platform, on this channel, to include Steven Seagal, when people were saying he was a liar, that he didn't live in the same dojo as the original Aikido founder and so forth, and he said he was teaching an MMA fighter a kick and so on and so forth. I've defended Steven Seagal. I've defended also Jean-Claude Van Damme. I've defended many martial artists, and even people who were not martial artists. So let's not get it twisted and say I'm just a Bruce Lee nut. I'm not. Anywhere where someone has been unrightfully targeted, and I'm aware of it, and it touches me, to include black folks who've been shot down by police officers. I've defended that. To include a white gentleman that was shot down by a police officer, Daniel Shaver. I did a video and a blog on that, begging for his life in a hotel in Arizona many years ago, And the cop walked. The man was unarmed, shot to death in the hotel hallway. Daniel Shaver left to grieve two daughters and a wife. So I've defended many people across every spectrum. So don't give me that I'm just a Bruce Lee nut. I'm a nut for anyone that's being oppressed, that's being abused in any way. That's just me. Now back on this subject of Bruce Lee, and I'll conclude. So I've already laid everything else out there, so you can find that on your own. As far as people who have defended Bruce Lee, his position, not a position that he claimed himself, the world gave Bruce Lee the title that he has, the King of Kung Fu and the greatest martial artist of our time. The world gave that to him. Not me, not you, no one else. Collectively, the world. And it's never going to go away. I would hope. But I still think it's strange that a man, myself, who was inspired by Bruce Lee as a child to become a martial artist, and I remain that today and continue on until I can't do it anymore. It is strange to me that I have defended Bruce Lee more as it relates to his status continually than any student, to include Dan Inosanto, and I love him as well. Some people just don't want to touch the subject for whatever their reasons are. And I love Dan Inosanto again. I admire his art, the Filipino arts, and his knowledge and wisdom in the martial arts, and even that which he learned through Bruce Lee. Haven't seen Linda Lee defend him. Haven't seen Robert Lee, his brother, defend him in that respect or regard. Shannon Lee, his daughter. Haven't seen it. Now, had Brandon Lee still been alive today, God rest his soul as well, he would be defending his father, because that was the type of spirit and personality he had. But what's the matter with everyone else that was in his circle? Family and students. And I'm not beating up on anyone. I'm just curious to know. But outside of all of the other people who I stand to speak out for, who can't speak out for themselves, or even to assist them in their trek in this very vicious world in which we live. Outside of that, I will continue, as often as I deem it necessary, to speak out against those people who say that Bruce Lee was not a legitimate martial artist and that he was just an actor. Like Victor Moore said, he was just an actor. No, he wasn't. He was someone that intimidated a lot of people, not intentionally. He was someone that people were very jealous of because they, at the time, more so than not, didn't have the devotion in their particular art and the self-esteem to push themselves like Bruce Lee did. He was one of a kind in the martial arts, and there are other ones just like him in the martial arts, but during his era he was one of a kind. Just like there was one Michael Jordan, one Muhammad Ali, there was one Jimi Hendrix, there was one of many types of individuals in various types of vocations and endeavors. It takes something to be the only one in some parts of our history. And Bruce Lee was that only one. And there are many greats that followed him. And we have many greats today. But again, this subject was about why no one has ever defended Bruce Lee's position as the greatest martial artist that was from his stable, from his family, from his schools and his student ranks, but brother teacher. I've done that. I have done that, and me alone. And if you can prove that what I just said is not true, don't just tell me and don't just tell us. Prove what I said is wrong by coming up with something material, and you post that in the comments. Who it is that has done what I have done and continue to do as it relates to the late, great martial arts master Lee Sao Lung, John Fan, Bruce Lee. So long.